Welcome to the charming and historic Greenwich Village in the heart of New York City,
where every cobblestone street tells a story of resilience, creativity, and community.
Nestled between the Hudson River and 6th Avenue, this neighborhood has always been a sanctuary for artists, activists, and anyone in search of belonging.
As we stroll through these historic streets, we'll uncover stories behind notable locations and architectural gems.
So, sit back and immerse yourself in the history of this beloved neighborhood,
where pride is not just a month, but a way of life.
The Washington Square Arch was designed by Stanford White in 1882 to commemorate the inauguration of George Washington. Its design is based on the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. The site was once a potter's field, burial ground, and execution ground, adding a haunting layer to its idyllic appearance. Greek Revival rowhouses line the north side, originally upper-class homes, now part of NYU. It has long been a hub for queer youth and counterculture. Stonewall-era activists often gathered here to organize and decompress.
Designed by Emery Roth and Sons in the 1950s, this building marked the rise of luxury apartment buildings in New York City. The setbacks and curved balconies emphasize light and air, post-war optimism in architecture. But the building replaced historic townhouses, sparking preservation debates. It was home to notable LGBTQ+ figures, including writer-activist Larry Kramer, who co-founded Gay Men's Health Crisis here, and Edie Windsor, whose Supreme Court case struck down the Defense of Marriage Act.
A narrow federal-style townhouse from the early 19th century featuring simple brickwork and dormers.
Once home to Eve's Hangout, opened by Polish-Jewish lesbian Eve Adams, the venue hosted poetry readings, political discussions, and social gatherings.
Eve was arrested for obscenity and deported, making her one of the first lesbians persecuted under U.S. vice laws. She was eventually murdered during the Holocaust.
A charming curved block lined with Federal and Greek Revival houses dating back to the 1820s. Its curve defies Manhattan's grid, a rare planning anomaly, often used as a filming location due to its picturesque intimacy. Though its name is coincidental, it has become a popular backdrop for photography and queer art installations. Housed in the classic narrow West Village storefront, with a modest facade and deep interior, the shop blended in architecturally with its neighbors, but stood out in its purpose. Founded by Greg Rothwell, a former partner of Harvey Milk, the Oscar Wilde Bookshop was the first gay and lesbian bookstore in the world. It opened just 2 years before the Stonewall Riots, and became a cultural lighthouse for the gay liberation movement, offering queer literature, community flyers, political pamphlets, and a safe space together.
The inn is made up of two 19th century stable buildings, later merged and remodeled. Once a legitimate bar, it was sold and retrofitted as a mafia-run gay bar, common in the 1960s with no liquor license or fire exits. It was one of the few places in the West Village where queer people could dance openly. Interior once featured mirrored walls, dim lighting, and no liquor license, designed for discretion. Directly in front is a triangular green space, which includes the Gay Liberation sculpture by George Segal, white bronze figures, and peaceful, everyday intimacy. One of the first monuments in the U.S. to depict queer love and pride in public space. The 1969 Stonewall Riots began here, sparking the queer liberation movement.
Christopher Street, one of the oldest streets in Manhattan, retains its original curvature, which gives it an informal, village-like charm. It leads directly to the Hudson River piers, which were originally used for shipping, but now are significant LGBTQ+ landmarks. In the mid-20th century, this stretch became a runway of queer identity, especially for trans women of color, many of whom lived double lives between Harlem, where they often had family, and the Village, where they found community. Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera were frequently seen here, often hanging out by the piers or leading street protests. it became known as a sanctuary and survival zone. This street was the first in the U.S. to host a Pride March in 1970. Over time, the street's association with the LGBTQ+ community became so prominent that in Germany today, Pride marches are called Christopher Street celebrations.
This corner is packed with Italianate and Greek Revival townhouses, typical of the village's 19th century streetscape. Marie's Crisis sits in a building where Thomas Paine, revolutionary thinker and author of Common Sense, died. Now a bar known for nightly show tune sing-alongs. There's also the Duplex Cabaret, featuring a converted two-story layout, ideal for live performances. Both bars are historic havens for queer performers and artists. This is where Broadway dreams flourish in public.
Built in the 1840s, the corner tavern structure retains its original bar and curved corner entrance. It features a pressed tin ceiling and wood paneling, evocative of New York City's pre-war saloon style. It's recognized by the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission for its cultural significance. In 1966, members of the Mattachine Society staged their famous Sippin' here, asserting the right to be served as openly gay men.
Built in 1931 in the Art Deco style, it was the only jail of its kind in the U.S., unusually located here in the heart of Greenwich Village.
Its proximity to the street meant detainees could shout out the windows to friends and lovers below. Many queer women and gender nonconforming people were held here, including Stonewall icons Dorme Delivery.
It became a symbol of both oppression and queer resistance, where voices can't be silenced even behind bars.
Built in 1877 in high Victorian Gothic style, with stained glass and 172-foot clock tower. It is used to be a courthouse that handled women's cases. Architect Frederick Clark Withers used polychrome stone and dramatic arches, converted into a public library in the 1960s, which was a victory for the historic preservation movement. Next door stood the Women's House of Detention. The proximity meant that accused women can be taken directly between the jail and the courthouse, often through underground tunnels.
Operating between the 50s and 60s, it occupied the ground floor of 3 1845 brick row houses, featuring a layout that included a front bar area, a central space for dining, and a back room for dancing.
It served mostly working-class lesbians, many of whom could not be out in their daily lives, in spite of being mafia-run and frequently raided by the police.
It offered a crucial refuge where women could socialize, flirt, and dance, despite laws that criminalized same-sex dancing.
Designed by Studio AI, the geometric steel canopy marks the memorial with solemn beauty. Its triangular layout reflects both the site's shape and the pink triangle reclaimed from Nazi-era homophobia. Surrounded by Walt Whitman's poetry etched in granite, a tribute to queer literary history. The memorial honors over 100,000 New Yorkers lost to AIDS, many of whom sought care across the street at St. Vincent's.
At RAMSA, we believe that honoring the past is essential to building a more inclusive future.
The store is part of our mission at Q+, to support and celebrate diverse voices in architecture and beyond.
We're proud to preserve the stories that shaped our city and to spotlight the spaces where queer lives have thrived.
Because design is not just about buildings, it's about people, community, and visibility.
Whether you identify as LGBTQ+ or an ally, your presence and support truly matter.
We're grateful you joined us in honoring the spaces that shaped us. Let's build a future where everyone belongs.